It is Friday, July 6th. Let's talk PlayStation. So I have two quick announcements to make before we get into LTPS this week. Number one, the PlayStation Vita documentary video is finally completed. That will be uploaded next Tuesday, which actually, let me double check because Lord knows I didn't prepare ahead of time here. So that would be the 10th. So July 10th, the PS Vita documentary will be live on the main channel. Please, for the love of God, watch this video. I spent a lot of time working on it, and I think it's actually the best video I've done in a very long time, if not the best video. And actually, if you are a Patreon supporter, it is actually live right now for Patreon supporters. And I don't want to be the guy that says, like, oh yeah, hey, donate to Patreon, but considering how much time it took, I would absolutely appreciate it and love it if some of you would go on there and help me out a little bit, because I don't do this full time. And I don't have a full staff or anything, so that video did take a long time, and I would love to do more videos like that, but my God, that one took a long time. But it will come out July 10th for everybody else to watch, and I'm telling you, just go watch it, and please let me know what you think. July 10th. The other announcement is this LTPS is being recorded rather early. This is actually Wednesday night that I'm recording this, and it will still go live on Friday. I'm going to be out of town, and I'll be leaving basically tomorrow morning. So I more or less have to do it now because all my equipment's here and whatnot. So I got to get this filmed and edited and uploaded. So keep in mind, if there's some sort of major Sony news story and we're not talking about it, that is why. With all announcements out of the way, now we can get into our first news story, which is that PlayStation trophies are 10 years old. Sony released trophies July 2nd, 2008 via a firmware update for PlayStation 3. The first game to ever get trophies, trophy support was Super Stardust HD. And, man, I mean, you guys know I love trophies a lot, so, I mean, I have a long history of doing trophy-related type stuff and videos and whatnot. I have 100 and some odd platinums. I've really slowed down in the past 2 years, but, yeah, there you go. I thought that was just kind of a cool little announcement. Moving on, Insomniac's James Stevenson announced on the Reset Era forum that the 2016 Ratchet & Clank, we all remember this, it's a kind of not necessarily a remake, but like a reboot of the first Ratchet & Clank, came out 2016 on PS4. This is actually the most successful game for Insomniac ever. They actually recently said that on Reset Era, and that's interesting because you would think it might have been maybe a Resistance or something. I mean, I didn't actually know offhand, but it's intriguing because that was also released as a budget game. It also had a movie tie-in because there was a Ratchet & Clank theatrical release as well, which didn't do nearly as well in relation to what the game was trying to do. But yeah, that game actually did very well, and granted, Spider-Man will probably take that crown once that game comes out, because I have no doubt that Spider-Man come September is probably going to do very, very well. Much better than that 2016 Ratchet & Clank, but it just kind of proves that a lot of people are still hungry and thirsty for Ratchet & Clank, and Insomniac pretty much has a team dedicated to doing Ratchet & Clank pretty much 24/7. So we haven't heard about them in a long time in terms of what they're doing with Ratchet & Clank, if they're going to be working on a new title or if they're giving it a break right now. Obviously, they're full steam ahead on Spider-Man, so they probably don't have a team right now doing another Ratchet & Clank, but it's not surprising I mean, it is surprising to hear. I honestly would have thought it would have been another game. Moving on, PlayStation's Russia Twitter account tweeted this picture this past week, which shows a PlayStation 4 Pro and an X symbol, and it says something along the lines of, like, get ready, dive in, for those who play, I can't remember offhand, but it's like pretty cryptic, right? So I just want to cover this real quick. A lot of people are speculating what that could mean, whether it's PlayStation Now coming to Russia or if it's a cross-play announcement, something like that, right? Because obviously they're teasing something. I just want to note right away, I mean, I wouldn't get too fussy or too worried about this. I mean, this happens a lot whenever it's some sort of lower subsidiary of PlayStation in terms of, like, whether it's PlayStation Netherlands or PlayStation Canada or, you know, some sort of territory that you typically don't see them make announcements, you know what I mean? Normally they'll make territory-related announcements, that's why those Twitter accounts exist, but typically you would see a major announcement come from just the main PlayStation Twitter account or the US PlayStation blog. The Europe PlayStation blog is also a big one. You will see announcements for that as well, but that's still pretty territory-specific, so I wouldn't get too crazy about this Russian post. I mean, it is probably something more specific to Russia and not necessarily PlayStation as a whole, because a lot of people, especially the internet, people like to cherry-pick certain things and then go crazy about it, so for this one, I would kind of relax. wax. This one I thought was rather odd. So Starhawk, if you remember the PlayStation 3 game Starhawk by Incognito Games, they were also the team that did Warhawk, and Warhawk's one of my favorite PS3 games of all time. I love that game a lot. But Starhawk was their follow-up, and it was kind of like based on this dude named Emmett Graves and Star Combat and all that. Anyway, recently the service for the game randomly turned off, right? Like there was no notice of closure or anything like that. If you go to the PlayStation Store, it actually lists, and I guess it's been there for like maybe a month or so. Obviously, people don't usually go out of their way to see the PlayStation Store listing for Starhawk, but apparently it's been there for like around a month or so, basically saying that the game servers were going to be shut down. And what's odd is that normally server shutdowns get upwards to a year notice, right? Of usually Sony publicly telling people, like, listen, this game that you enjoy, this is going to be the final day that it's going to be playable. But yeah, Starhawk just out of nowhere shut down on people, and I don't know how many people still play it. Obviously, it must have died down more so than Warhawk, because Warhawk still has players to this day. So this next one is about PlayStation Vue. We don't talk about PlayStation Vue too often, but it's worth noting that if you do use the service, it's going up by $5 on both of the plans that are included in the service. So there's a base plan for around $40 some odd, goes up to $45, and there's a plan with more content that's usually around $75. That's going to go up to $80. Apparently an industry-wide thing, whether it's Sling TV or other streaming services. I guess the rising business costs are just forcing pretty much most streaming services to up their costs. So, just a little FYI. I did also thought it was worth noting because, like, we don't talk about PS Vue, like, ever. And I know a lot of people actually find it to be a pretty good alternative to cutting cable. In regards to price and amount of content you're getting. I would assume you're not getting most content from, you're not getting all the content from like cable television, but like I myself, I haven't watched cable television in honestly probably over a decade now. It's been a long time for me. I keep just Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. I mean, if there's the occasional show on HBO or something that I want to see, I just kind of just think, oh well, I'm just not going to watch it. And I've been pretty happy for the most part. I just, because cable is expensive. And but a lot of people have found PS Vue to be a healthy alternative. Now, I haven't looked into it myself, but if any of you have a subscription, I would actually be interested to hear what you think of it. Now, in another unsurprising news story regarding crossplay, Bethesda's Jarryd Howard recently commented on Fallout 76 and how it isn't going to have crossplay, and why. He basically specifically said Sony isn't as helpful as everyone would like. There you go. More like that's what we've been talking about when it comes to crossplay, is that whether you care about it or not, this does not look good for Sony. Over and over again, you keep seeing game after game, news story after news story. Now you've got something like Bethesda backing this, saying, yeah, Sony's not working with us on this one. I mean, this is just going to look worse and worse and worse over time. More and more people are going to get pissed off about this, and they will leave PlayStation. They will leave their platform. This is not something Sony wants to keep doing long term, I'm telling you. And it's weird that Shawn Layden, had finally admitted, yeah, we're looking into possibilities, which is such a bogus answer, because and maybe in some way, maybe looking to monetize it or make sure that they don't lose out on console sales or something, but they got to understand the long-term repercussions to something like this. Which segues kind of nicely into our news story, which is that Shawn Layden had recently commented about how, kind of acknowledging the company's comeback, right? And that comeback we're referring to is the 10-year tailspin of the PlayStation 3. Shawn Layden actually openly admitted this, and he was quoted as saying, "Sometimes you can go back and look at it and say that that was our Icarus moment. We flew too close to the sun. We took a bit of a dip in the business, to say the least, during the PlayStation 3 era, only finally fighting it out to parity with Xbox 360 by the end of the life cycle." Now, this was during the Game Lab event in Barcelona, and they were just kind of reflecting a little bit, and Shawn was openly admitting that rough little history and how the company did finally reposition themselves and change their attitude completely. So it's just polarizing to hear him kind of talk about that, and it's true, right? That is absolutely the company's history, which is that they really were cocky with the PlayStation 2 going into the PlayStation 3, and they realized that consumers will leave their platform if they have to, when you've got a ridiculously overpriced box compared to, say, the Xbox 360 at the time, because the most expensive Xbox 360 was $100 cheaper than the least expensive PlayStation 3. And there was just about other, again, long-term detrimental effects to what the PS3 was, which, namely the cell processor also didn't help them in the long run. I mean, they doubling down on Blu-ray was probably one of the better moves that they made with PlayStation 3, but still, for the most part, it was quite a bad era for them, and they did finally bring it back by really working on their first-party games, releasing quality stuff, lowering the price of the box, fantastic marketing near the end of the PlayStation 3, and all around just being more friendly with developers and working with people, and doing what they did, which was just really turn it around and give back to the consumer. And they've been doing that with PlayStation 4 as well, but now that they're on top, and now that they're doing this crossplay bullshit, I mean, you can see the two ends of the spectrum here, and they're really starting to teeter back into that, I really hope Shawn understands the repercussions of what this company does and what they say and how they're treating consumers. And as Microsoft does more pro-consumer things, people are going to see that and they are going to change their minds. Those are some of the news stories that I want to talk about with you guys from this past week. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I will be going out of town. Also, if you hear a lot of stuff in the background, I'm technically recording this on the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July to the U.S., but tons of people doing fireworks, so sorry if there's like a bunch of fireworks going off in the background. I know I put music and stuff during this, but I don't know, just in case you hear it. Because a lot of times you'll also sometimes hear my pet rats drinking water. You guys know I keep pet rats, and sometimes when they're drinking water, it's just so damn loud. Regardless of music, they show up in the audio, so just a little FYI. But please, the July 10th, the PlayStation Vita documentary. I absolutely would love if most of you would get the time to watch it. It's about 23 minutes long, so it's not super long, mind you. But again, I'm really proud of it so far, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So thank you all so much. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Lost Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.